Hello, my name is Chad Kinsley. I'm maintenance personnel at Carolina Beach State Park. Protection of fly traps and longleaf, conservation in Carolina Beach's unique ecosystems. The intention of this project is to put forward the major issues impacting the park and give recommendations on ways of mitigating the degradation that is affecting these unique area. There are a lot of ecosystems, historical sites, and significant species that are impacted, and they're valuable resources that need to be preserved. A little background of the park. Carolina Beach, established in 1969. That's the entrance to the park there. Multiple historical sites from areas once inhabited by Native Americans, train tracks from the 1800s, as well as Sugarloaf, a lookout point, old sand dune that was used even before the Civil War to get a good commanding view of the waterways. 13 unique plant communities recognized by the park. 600 plant and animal species can be found within this location. It's estimated that a fourth of all of North Carolina's species can be found within this small radius of just 761 acres. And the most famous thing it's probably known for, 5 types of carnivorous plants: bladderworts, butterworts, sundews, the Venus flytrap, and the yellow pitcher plant can all be found naturally in this small area. And it is extra unique that it's such a small location and it has so much significant difference in ecosystems and life, and it is so surrounded by such an urban area, and it's a nice little island onto itself. There's a lot of recreational activity done at the park. It's probably the primary focus of the park. There's fishing allowed both on the piers as well as on the beaches. We've got a lot of motorsports, ski-doos, boat rentals, party boats, people putting in their own boats and fishing. 9.5 miles of hiking trails, 80 plus campsites, and group camping for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, things like that. And I can tell you from experience working here over the summer, it has seen an extreme increase in visitation. I have the numbers from 2019 and 2020, and even with 2020 being closed down because of COVID for 3 or 4 months, we still have had 133% visitation over 2019. That's missing 4 months. So that just shows you the insane amount of extra people that have been showing up to the park. Longleaf pine from UNCW, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this community, but it is a community focused around fire. They've evolved around fire. They thrive and are well protected against the mild fires that were native to this area thanks to the dry climate and regular lightning strikes. It was estimated that 92 million acres at one point covered the US in longleaf pines, and unfortunately less than 3 million now remains. The park contains roughly 300 acres of longleaf pines, and there's multiple reasons why we had that massive decline. One of them is it was used in boat building, tar and pitch. It was used for turpentine. It was used for grazing of hogs. And just when the colonists came in, they started a regime of preventing forest fires. And just not knowing how important it was to this community, preventing the fires for so long allowed the competitors to come in and overpower, and unfortunately it caused a lot of species to decline. The Venus flytrap only exists in this area, and with such a massive decline in their overall coverage of these trees, the areas that the Venus flytrap can exist have shrunk to near nothing. Which brings us to the Venus flytrap. Unfortunately, it's only found within, depending on what resource you look at, 100 to 75 miles of Wilmington. Now that would have been much bigger when the trees were far more widespread, But unfortunately, that's all that remains. They're carnivorous. They are listed as vulnerable, and it is a Class H felony to take them. And they are also well adapted to the fire community that they evolved up in. They do not like being crowded or covered up. They like lots of sunlight. And also the regular mild burning allows them to get a lot of nutrients and allows them to spread quicker. It also allows them to flower more often, and other species around them flower, bringing in more pollinators, allowing their population to grow. Other species that have adapted for this community, you have the red cockaded woodpecker, who really likes living inside the longleaf pines. They will nest in other pine trees, but they prefer the longleaf. The eastern box turtle is adapted for burying itself when mild fires go by, and they can survive. Unfortunately, if the fires get too intense, they will not make it, and their populations will have big declines. There are species of moth which are adapted for burning. Also, the fox squirrel, another fan favorite of the park. It really enjoys eating the longleaf pine cones. Current issues facing the park. So the Flytrap Trail is one of the biggest attractions because people are so interested to see the Venus flytrap. Unfortunately, a lot of times people will come and they are very elusive little plants. So they come a long way to come and see this plant and they can't find it. So they'll be looking for it, they'll be wandering through, making social trails, trying to locate these plants. And a lot of times they'll be crushing the plants they're looking for underfoot because they are very hard to find if you don't know what you're looking for. Also, we do have an issue with poaching. A lot of people won't even realize that it's a felony, or they just don't care, but they'll take a single leaf off, take it home as a souvenir, or they might dig up the whole plant itself in order to take it and try to grow it in their own garden. Bridge barrier. This is bridge barrier depicted here, the entrance and the fishing area itself. This is a big issue with the increase in visitation. We've seen a massive increase in pollution here. One of the reasons is it is on the very edge of the park, and this is actually the entrance. Right in front of this is a city street, so people can walk right into this trail and they're right inside the park, and it's far away from the center of activity, so they don't see a lot of rangers or employees, so it tends to foster the worst behavior. I tell you, working over the summer, I went up and down these trails many times carrying buckets and buckets of trash, and you would just find all kinds of things. People go there and fish. They fish in all these little alcoves, and they'll just throw whatever they brought with them right on the ground. And because of COVID and the increased visitation and just the lack of rangers, there has been a slowdown in their controlled burn plan. They regularly burn every 2 to 3 years, but unfortunately, because of the busy hustle and bustle, they've let a lot of the areas go past that 3-year mark since their previous burn. And the buildup of underbrush, that is another big issue. There have been a lot of hurricanes that have hit in the last 3 or 4 years, and every time a hurricane hits, multiple trees go down. We've got to cut them up and throw them in the woods and get the park back into activity. And unfortunately, there's not enough time to pull those big trees out, so that wood just stays there and rots and becomes more fuel for possible fires. Also, saltwater intrusion. It's a natural part of the park, but a lot of trees will be killed by the saltwater, and then that tree has to be dropped and chopped up and added to that underbrush fire. Underbrush fire fuel. Combating the poaching. There are some things already being done at the park to stop the poaching. There is signs. You have an example right there showing, saying that there is a federal offense for taking the plants. There is a viewing platform that was constructed some years back where Venus flytraps and pitcher plants are artificially planted in order to try and distract bad behavior. So if someone's coming through, hopefully they see the plants that they want and they don't go looking further into the more natural communities. And if they do happen to take a plant, they'll take one that was put there artificially. Unfortunately, this area doesn't get much attention due to the increased visitation and the pressures put on the manpower already. So when I went and took that picture that was earlier in the slideshow of the Venus flytrap today, that was the only Venus flytrap I could find in about a 10-15 minute period of me looking for it. And I know what to look for, so it's pretty bad when the artificial plants themselves are running low. So it needs more attention. It needs to be more regularly updated and fresh plants planted. Here is the greenhouse where we grow the plants. Some examples of some of the young pitcher plants as well as young flytraps. So what is our plan for preventing these issues? Year one, we want to do an intensive survey of the area, looking at each location in the park and determining how long it's been since it had been last burned, how much of the invasive competing species like turkey oaks are in the area that need to be pushed back, and how much underbrush is present. Then, once these surveys have been done, the ranger in charge of burning will create a schedule prioritizing which ones need to be conducted first and which ones need to be conducted last. Once all those burns are done and everything is in that 2 to 3 year window, specialized in or specifically mentioned in the burn plan, we want to do quarterly surveys of all these areas. So each quarter, every area is looked at to see if it still is in the proper position on the ranking scale. So if something's changed in a specific area, then it can be moved in the priority. If there are full-grown oaks that need to be pushed back because they're in high populations, we have techniques like the slash and squirt, where we can cut into the xylem of the tree and put some chemicals in there that'll cause that full-grown tree to die shortly over time, and then we can move it out of the area. Increased patrols to prevent the poaching as well as the littering that's going on in places like Bridge Barrier. The patrols need to be prioritized. I realize that the rangers are pressed for time and they're very busy, but I think it needs to be made a part of every shift that a ranger will go on these patrols to these areas and specifically look out for these issues and hand out citations and document those citations. Increased signage. I think we need more of these signs just notifying people so the ones that don't have ill intentions realize that it is a felony. And monthly flytrap inventories. This is something that can be done even by maintenance personnel like myself. I believe that we should be looking at those artificially planted plants and documenting how many of them are there. And each month we have the numbers and we can compare whether or not they are declining or increasing. They'll most likely be declining, but we can try and determine, are they declining because of natural causes, they're just not surviving in that location, or is it because of poaching? We will replace the plants with freshly grown plants, but by documenting it, we can have a record of increased possible poaching activity. And what will we do with this 1 year worth of data? Well, not much. We need to spread that out over 5 years. So my plan is to collect 5 years worth of data, and then with 5 years worth of increased visitation numbers, decreased fly traps from poaching, and increases in citations due to poaching and littering, hopefully we can petition the higher powers in the state parks organization to increase the manpower of the ranger force at the park. One of the rangers that I work with, I spoke with him on multiple occasions for this project. He has been working at this one location for 28 years. And he said that in the entire time he's been here, they've never increased the number of rangers. It has still been 3 rangers and 1 superintendent. That's kind of crazy considering the vast amount of business and visitation that this park hits. It is contending up there with most visited parks in the state most years. It is a extremely popular location because it is next to such a busy hub and that world-known plant, the Venus flytrap, brings a lot of people in. When I was there today collecting photos, I saw a family that specifically came just to see. And I didn't ask them, but they sounded like they were some form of Eastern European from the language they were speaking. And they came all the way just to see those flytraps. And that's a daily occurrence that you see people from all over. And the first thing they ask you is, where can I find the flytraps? So with this increased information in this data, we need to petition to get the increased rangers, and if possible, get a visitor cap for the location. Some parks do this, and I think if we could get an entrance that is controlled and we monitor the number of people in the park, and if it gets too full, we put a cap on it and tell them they have to wait until someone else exits. I think this would allow the pressure that's being put on through the sheer number of people to decrease and prevent a lot of the degradation that we're seeing to this location. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a nice night.